Antony Loewenstein, journalist and author of 2 books, is one of Australia's brightest and most critical young intellectuals. ElectionWIRE caught up with him at his home in Sydney's inner west to discuss some issues he's thinking about leading up to the election.
I'm voting Green. We're in Greenla here in Sydney, and Sam Byrne, he's got a battle on his hands. Anthony Albanese, who's a front bencher, is the local member. He's not particularly massively popular, but he obviously has a huge machine behind him from the Labor Party. So the chances are he will win, but certainly Greenla is a seat which is increasingly moving more and more towards the left and towards the Greens. So let's hope we give Labor a scare. There are differences. I mean, the broadband network plan is different. I think Labor wants to do it and the Liberals don't, or in a different form. There are differences. On foreign policy, there's virtually no difference. Sadly, I think there is a tendency in both major parties to be completely enthralled to the US alliance. The US does something Australia must follow. The only reason we're in Iraq and Afghanistan was simply for alliance maintenance, really. It's partly, I mean, they, for example, advocate the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, which is a very important issue for me. I think Australia should not be there. The Greens advocate pulling out. They are opposed to the war in Iraq, which I was opposed to as well. They have a far more progressive view on the Israel-Palestine conflict. They're not necessarily bought and sold by the Israel lobby, as the both major parties are. Those in positions of power don't want the realities of war to get out, because if they do, I can't remember the exact line now, but there's a very famous expression that says something like, if people knew what war was like, they would never support a war ever again. So to actually find out more details, I mean, admittedly, WikiLeaks stuff is not images, it's only text, and I think one of the reasons why Abu Ghraib, say, was so powerful, stuff like that was happening all over the place, was there were pictures.
It shows you the sort of aggressive, cruel, ugly nature of an occupation.
The Australian media's kind of mentioned it in passing. I noticed a few days ago the Sydney Morning Herald was very critical of the fact that what WikiLeaks did, supposedly, according to the Herald, endangering Afghan lives. It's a pissing contest going on, and the corporate media is losing. When there were a few reports when it first was leaked a few weeks ago of supposed crimes committed by Australian troops, which haven't really gone any further, and I guess the excuse the media would say, well, it was an election campaign and we're focusing on issues here. But of course this is symptomatic of the fact that foreign policy basically has no impact on this campaign. Problem with that is that I think this is a slippery slope, that I fear that this is going to start moving into political speech. Terrorism to me is the key one, that, you know, the idea of saying, well, this website endorses terrorism, who defines what that is? I can imagine, as I've written about, a situation where someone says, well, Hamas, for example, is a terrorist organisation, according to the Australian government, Hezbollah. So therefore the logic would suggest that why not block their websites, why not make them illegal, in the government's logic, and that to me would be a profound concern. And I think one of the things that became very clear being in the US was the disappointment of many on the left towards Obama. And I don't say this because... Do you think
that mirrors our disappointment, the disappointment in Australia on the left with Rudd, which I've come across in my travels?
It might have, and I think one of the things that's sort of quite pathetic about it in a way, that so many of the left were sold on the lie in the first place. I think in America, what you've seen, that so many of the so-called left who were very opposed to Bush, torture, war on terror, Iraq, Afghanistan, have pretty much become silent. And they've dropped the issues. They have, despite the fact that on a lot of these key issues, including torture, rendition, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.